This podcast is scheduled for one fall.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 28th episode of the Guilty Pleasures Podcast, the home of No Holds Barred podcasting. Now, on this podcast, we do not shy away from controversy. In fact, we attack it head on. We put controversy in the sharpshooter in honor of the great Bret the Hitman Hart, who we are very sad to report has been diagnosed with prostate cancer, Ben.
Yeah, it's very, very tragic, of course, and I'm one of the biggest Bret Hart fans that there's ever been. We'll be talking about Bret Hart and his contributions to professional wrestling a little bit later on in the episode, but very nice call, John, with the sharpshooter there at the beginning to pay tribute to one of, in my opinion, the five best in-ring workers in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there, so thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, John DeMedio, a.k.a. Johnny D., and I am here with my amazing co-host, the incredibly talented Benjamin Wolfgang. Ben, how's everything going, my man?
Man, everything is going well over here, John. Things are snow's beginning to melt down here in Washington, D.C., and thanks to climate change, I was able to go outside and lie in the snow and get a tan today because it was 65 fucking degrees. So there are definitely some consequences to climate change, as we've discussed before, but today we got the good side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the bad side of it and now the good side of it. So it was certainly a nice change of pace to not have to wear a heavy jacket outside today. That's for sure. So everyone, welcome to episode 28. Thank you so much for tuning in. On this episode, it's going to be strictly audio, no video this week. But this will still go up on YouTube, so you can catch us there. Please be sure to reach out to us. We are available now on many mediums. Like I had mentioned, we are on YouTube. We are also on SoundCloud. And you can reach us on two different places. You can reach us on Twitter at the GP Podcast. That's the GP Podcast. You can also visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegppodcast. And I also forgot to mention that we are, of course, available on iTunes as well. So please be sure to subscribe and follow us on all those different mediums. We would greatly appreciate it.
We're social media tycoons.
I think so at this point. So we'll have to check to see if there's anything else that we haven't explored yet. I'm sure we can find something.
Absolutely.
So, yes, once again, thank you all so very much. This is going to be a little bit of a different episode. Super Bowl 50 is coming up this Sunday, which is going to be a huge event, as it always is. So, this is going to be a little bit more of a football-heavy episode. So, for all of our sports fans, I'm sure you're happy to hear that. So, we're going to start off with football this week and then go into our normal format. So, Ben, why don't you get us started here and introduce us into our football segment this week?
Absolutely, yeah. There are a number of very compelling storylines, of course, John, going into Super Bowl 50, between the Broncos and the Panthers. But one of the ones that's getting the most attention, and I think deservedly so, is Peyton Manning. Now, there's news out today, and this is no surprise to anyone that this is probably going to be Peyton Manning's final game. I mean, we've talked all season long, John, on this podcast, and many others have as well, that this is not the same Peyton Manning that we've seen for so many years. The ball just doesn't have the same zip that he always had, and his neck is clearly not right. His arm is clearly not right. He's just getting old, 40 years old. So
right.
Look, this is probably going to be the end of the line for Peyton Manning. I think that is fair to say, and look, I mean, he's been called the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, and I think that's probably an accurate way to phrase it. This guy has been an absolute machine in the regular season with the Colts for 10 plus years, and they just consistently, season after season, it seemed, would always put up at least 10 to 12 wins, sometimes more than that. And his Broncos teams have been damn good over the past 3 seasons. But with Peyton Manning, the good and the bad. Sort of the yin and the yang to this is, of course, he's got a losing record in the playoffs. He's 1-2 in the Super Bowl right now, and so you look at it. If he were to win this game, John, he moves to 2-2 in the Super Bowl. He's got 2 rings instead of just 1. That certainly helps his legacy. If he loses, his playoff record is even worse. He moves to 1-3 in the Super Bowl and is just completely dwarfed at that point by Tom Brady. So I mean, I think that the Brady and Manning comparisons, if they're not already settled in terms of Tom Brady being the better of the two, I think they would certainly be at that point. So there's a lot on the line here for Peyton Manning and his legacy, John. I mean, in your mind, I guess, does a win improve his legacy at all, and does a loss hurt it, or is he, or is this legacy talk maybe even somewhat misplaced, and he's already solidified himself as one of the greatest of all time?
Yeah, I normally don't buy into the whole, each Super Bowl or each season is so impactful in terms of a player's legacy. I think that's overblown because, people in the media want to make it seem like this specific game is extremely important. And when you have 2 weeks of time that you need to fill in terms of covering the Super Bowl, these are sort of the things that you have to talk about to make it interesting. So I normally don't buy into it too much, but I do think this is a huge game in terms of his legacy because the difference between 1 win and 2 wins in the Super Bowl is huge. It really is. You put yourself on another tier because there have been a decent amount of quarterbacks, a lot of them, that have won only 1 Super Bowl.
Sure, I mean, Trent Dilfers of the world have 1 Super Bowl ring, but not that many guys have 2.
Right, exactly. And there are a lot of pundits and analysts who value Super Bowl wins more than any other stat. And if you look at it that way, then you're right. Like Trent Dilfer and Peyton Manning are on the same level.
Right.
If you're looking at just, winning the big game being the most important thing in terms of a player's legacy. Now, we all know, of course, Peyton Manning is better than Trent Dilfer, with all due respect to him. But it's something interesting there, and it does show that this is really important for Peyton Manning. And it is interesting, too, because he would have 2 Super Bowl wins with 2 different teams.
Right.
And I don't have the statistics up in front of me, but I would think that he'd have to be one of maybe 2 quarterbacks, if the only one, to ever accomplish that. So
I think he would be the only one.
Yeah, so I mean, that is a huge, huge accomplishment. And I think he would certainly have to be celebrated for that. And that's right there is something that could separate himself from a guy like Tom Brady when you're comparing the two for the rest of the time, which will always happen because they're so closely linked together. So a win here would be huge, huge for his legacy, and also because you don't want to have a losing record in Super Bowls.
Right.
And, going 1-3, man, you sort of start to question if he's not clutch or not. And I think that's completely unfair because he's so amazing. I don't think that's a fair thing to say, but it will come up. But if you are 2-2 in Super Bowls, then that's not something that people can point to and say that, he folds in the biggest game imaginable of the season.
John, not to interrupt, I don't know. I kind of disagree with you a little bit. I mean, look, when you have, it's not just the 1-3 in the Super Bowls. I mean, he's got a losing record overall in the playoffs. He'll still have a losing record even if they win this game. And it's not like we're dealing with a small sample size. This guy's been in the league since 1998, and has been in the playoffs pretty much every season. I think short of his rookie year that he's been in the league. So I mean, you have to think that to some degree, something happens to this guy, whether it's, and sort of some of it can be blamed on some of his Colts teams, which frankly weren't that good, even though they put up 12-4 records. But I mean, you have to wonder if something changes with Peyton Manning when the postseason rolls around with that record.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I really do. I think, though, looking at a Super Bowl win-loss record is going to be a lot more relevant and easy to digest, I think, more or less, than looking at his total playoffs win and loss record. So if you're going down the things that you want to look at in terms of Peyton Manning and his career, his Super Bowl win-loss record is going to be higher up than his total playoffs, record.
That's true.
So, I do agree with you a little bit there. And, I think the whole playoffs win-loss record, I don't know if that's truly fair because a lot of his playoff losses have come against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
True.
And, yes, he does have a losing record. So, he definitely is far behind Tom Brady in that sense, but it's not like, and I know he has a few times lost to teams that were significantly worse than his during the regular season, but losing to arguably the best quarterback of all time and arguably one of the top 3 coaches of all time, it's not that shameful. It's not something that you look at and you say, "Wow, that's incredible." That's glaring that he's losing to Tom Brady. I mean, everyone loses to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
So I agree with you in that the win-loss record in the playoffs, it does mean something, and it is a little bit alarming, but I think in a way that's been overblown a little bit as well because you have to look at the circumstances in which that all took place. And I think it's not really fair because, as you just mentioned, and then I'll let you take this. His teams, I think the teams that he's had around him in his career have been incredibly overrated in terms of the players and their skill level.
Right.
I think he really has not had much to work with. And I think Tom Brady, on the other hand, I think it gets more play than it deserves that the players around him have been bad. I think that's not fair because if you remember, when Tom Brady won those 3 Super Bowls, his defense was unbelievable, and they had superstars at every defensive position.
Oh, yeah.
And in those 3 Super Bowls, it wasn't Tom Brady that won the game for them, at least in most people's opinion. It was that defense and Adam Vinatieri.
Right.
So, it was that defense that won them those games because if those games were put on Tom Brady to put up 35, 38 points, they would not have won. So, you have to look at both sides of the ball, and Peyton Manning has never had a good defense except for his last couple of years in Denver. So, what are your thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, I was just going to say that. This is probably the best defense he's ever had in his entire career. So from that perspective, I mean, if you're looking at a guy that's pushing 40 years old and has trouble getting the ball down the field, he's going to need a damn good defense in a game like this to have a hope of winning. Look, I mean, there's a part of me, and we'll get into our picks later, so I don't want to spoil that right now, but there's a part of me that does want to see, if not the Broncos winning the game and Peyton Manning being able to sort of ride off into the sunset like John Elway was able to do at the end of his career, then at least it's respectable because we remember what happened 2 years ago, John, against the Seattle Seahawks, where a lot of folks thought, okay, this is when Peyton Manning's going to get his second Super Bowl win. He'll be 2-1. He'll start closing in maybe on Tom Brady because Tom Brady hadn't won his 4th at that point. It's amazing how things change over the past 2 years. They got absolutely destroyed, and I think that you can kind of go back to that point as sort of the beginning of the decline, really, of Peyton Manning because the next season he wasn't himself at all, and for much of this season, he hasn't even been on the field. So I don't want to see another 43-8 that we saw against the Seattle Seahawks 2 years ago in the Super Bowl. I don't really have a rooting interest one way or the other as far as these two teams go, but I think it would be a shame just for all Peyton Manning has done, all that he has done for this league, all the endorsements, all the publicity, all the goodwill. I mean, he's been one of the greatest goodwill ambassadors, I think, in the history of professional sports, really, for the NFL over his lengthy career. So I don't think anybody wants to see him get blown out. And then to build upon that, John, I think if he were to get blown out, if Carolina were to win this game, 34-14 or maybe even worse than that, then I think that really does get piled on top of this legacy question and this question of this guy the bigger the stage, the more Peyton Manning folds. And I think if they get blown out again for the second Super Bowl in a row, the Denver Broncos, I think that does some damage to his legacy, at least in terms of what he's been able to do in big games when the stakes are the highest. So, look, I mean, best of luck to him. As we said, it's definitely the best defense that he's had, and they're going to need to rely on that. We'll get into that a little bit later on, the Denver defense and what they're going to be able to do against Cam Newton. But I think, John, one way or the other, our first prediction here, we'll make a lot of them throughout this show. But the first one, I think, is that even if the Denver Broncos win this game, I don't think Peyton Manning's going to be your MVP. I can't imagine. Maybe he has something up his sleeve that he
Right.
can pull out here. Maybe he'll have a 300-yard, 4-touchdown day, but I don't see that happening. I see more of a game manager role for Peyton Manning here in the Super Bowl, and the defense is going to have to take the lion's share of slowing this down and keeping the score low, as they did against New England, if Denver's going to pull this off.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, of course, I don't want to see him get embarrassed either. That would be really a shame for a guy that, everyone pretty much has always said is a really good guy. He's pretty humble on the field. He carries himself extremely well. He's never been in trouble. And as you said, he's a great ambassador for the game of football. And he really has revolutionized the quarterback position because no one did all of the audibles at the line of scrimmage and calling out defensive players and offensive line shifts on the fly before Peyton Manning.
Sure.
And now you notice that basically every quarterback in the league now does that. So they can all thank Peyton Manning for that. And the other thing would be, if he does have a really bad game here, Ben, you have to look at the final few years of Peyton Manning's career versus the final few years of Tom Brady's career. And you see that Peyton Manning has played pretty poorly over the last 2 years. This year, very poorly, more interceptions than touchdowns, which is almost unimaginable for him.
Right.
And Tom Brady has been playing the best football of his career. It seems like the guy just doesn't age, and he gets better. He's like a fine wine. He gets better with age. And, I think we sometimes have a selective memory, and we remember the last few years as opposed to the entire career.
Yeah.
And, if Tom Brady continues to be dominant and Peyton Manning goes out on such a bad note, I think that will have a very high impact on how we view both quarterbacks, maybe so much that it would be unfair in a way because we would put so much importance on that as opposed to looking at the entire career of both of these men.
I totally agree. Just one thing, John, before you move us on to our next topic, I will say this. If there is a blowout and Carolina does embarrass Denver in Super Bowl 50, that will get some pretty legitimate heel heat on the Carolina Panthers, I think, going into next season. They will be the villains of the NFL.
Yeah, you're right. I could definitely see that. So let's move on to the opposing quarterback in Super Bowl 50, and that is Cam Superman Newton.
Cam F. Newton.
Who, man, has had an absolutely dominant season. And you want to talk about revolutionizing the quarterback position. My God, he has looked incredible. He is far and away the MVP of this league, and he has solidified that and proved that in these playoffs where the Carolina Panthers have put up insane point totals and really have done that within the first couple quarters of each game. And they took the gas off against Seattle, and they just blew out Arizona. So they have looked absolutely fantastic. So he has certainly lived up to the expectations that were put on them for having such a great season and going 15-1, almost an undefeated season. Look, Cam Newton, we can all agree, is a fantastic football player.
No question.
But I mentioned this last week. And, I don't know if I caught some heat for it, but, on this podcast, like I say in the beginning, we don't shy away from controversy, and we talk about the topics that maybe some other people would shy away from. And this might be one of them, but there seem to be a lot of people that cheer against Cam Newton. And you had mentioned him getting heel heat. I do think he is the heel in this game. Really, it seems to me that it's completely misplaced and it's completely unfair. I'm wondering, and this is what I had said last week, that I believe it's because he is a successful, brash, a very good-looking, very rich, and successful African American playing a position that has been dominated by white players and white quarterbacks. So, what is your opinion on this? Do you think that's a valid point? And do you see some other ways maybe for why Cam Newton sort of gets some heat that maybe he probably doesn't deserve?
Look, I think there are a few things here. I mean, certainly the notion of African American quarterbacks still, and there have of course been plenty of them, over the course of NFL history, but there's still a rarity when you look at the number of white quarterbacks that there have been over, throughout history and even today in the league. So that's part of it. I think there are still some, stubborn racist stereotypes out there in terms of people looking at the quarterback position and thinking that it's better served to be played by a white person, which is of course completely absurd and offensive in 5 million different ways. But I think it's more than that, John. I don't think it has maybe as much. I think race is certainly a part of it. But I think it has more to do with just his general demeanor. And look, let's face facts. I'm not the guy's backing up on the field, but he is a cocky dude. I mean, there's just no question about that. I mean,
Well, Ben, really quickly,
sure.
is it cockiness or is it confidence? Do you think?
It depends how you look at it. I mean, to me, it's more confidence if you're backing it up
Right.
on the field. If you go 15-1, and you're blowing people out every week, I don't really have a problem with you running around on the sidelines and taking selfies while the game is still going on. When you're going 4-12 and he's doing the Superman shirt routine, that's a little bit of a different story. But this year, I didn't really have a problem with it. But look, he's one of the more outspoken quarterbacks that we've seen it seems that the NFL, John, speaking of Peyton Manning, just prefers to have a guy like a Peyton Manning be the star, be the focal point. Whether he's black or white, just kind of a more quiet, reserved, viewed as a homely family man, whatever the case may be, as opposed to somebody who's brash and outspoken and is willing to kind of put himself out there, pretend to be Superman, do all these different things. So I think that kind of makes people uncomfortable just because the NFL, by design or by accident, has kind of promoted this idea that they like the fine, upstanding quarterbacks who don't say anything, never brag about themselves, give all their credit to the teammates when they win a game, blah, blah, blah. Cam Newton doesn't do that.
Right, and really quickly, Ben, Peyton Manning, to go on your point, Peyton Manning has the vibe of being your next door neighbor.
Right.
He gives off the vibe like you'd go have a beer with him and talk about normal person problems. Right. Whereas Cam Newton comes off like he doesn't have any problems and he kind of has the world at his fingertips. So that might be part of it too.
That's absolutely part of it. I know I forget who I heard was on ESPN recently. Somebody made the case that he might be the most brash, outspoken quarterback since Jim McMahon and the 1985 Chicago Bears. I think that's probably true. So, and I would imagine that's only going to and rightfully so. Again, as you said, it is confidence to a large degree, not cockiness. I mean, if they go out there and they win this game, I'm not going to give him any shit for being extremely confident and extremely, if you want to call it cocky, in as far as his skills and the skill level of his team, because at that point he will have earned it. I think he already has earned it.
Yeah.
The shadow of a doubt. So he's getting some backlash. Is some of it racial? Yes. Are there still a lot of white NFL fans with racist tendencies who are afraid Cam Newton might steal their wife? Yes. I think that's probably
right.
out there. And unfortunately, it's always going to be prevalent in society, no matter how far ahead we seem to move with race relations. But to me, it's the combination of those two things that have made him such a lightning rod this week. But I have no problem with it, John. And frankly, I kind of like it because he's challenging the status quo in a way that I think it needs to be challenged.
Absolutely. And you and I love that. And we hope that we're doing that with this podcast in a way. But yeah, I think all this against Cam it's just completely unfair. I like him because other people hate him. I tend to go that route sometimes when I see that something is very unfair and it doesn't make sense. I tend to back that regardless. And I'm definitely doing it here. But yeah, people feel threatened by him, Ben. And
which is absurd, by the way. Come on, you're threatened how exactly? You're sitting on your couch watching him play football thousands of miles away and will never meet him in your entire life. So that whole concept is just ridiculous.
Well, it's because people don't like change. And people don't like things that are different. And I think in an unfair way, people think that he's a threat to the way the game has been played for decades. And the way that quarterbacks have handled themselves in the past with that they've handled themselves differently. Right. And I think people are afraid and scared by that they don't want this thing that they're used to change. And, that's sad. I mean, I can understand it in a way, but that doesn't mean that I have to agree with it. And I think we as a society need to get over that. We need to be more more welcoming to change and to evolution, and stop trying to hold on to things of the past. And not to get off completely off topic, but politically we're kind of seeing that with Republican candidates, how they sort of say that we want to make America great again and how it used to be, but it can't be that way. It can't, because things evolve. They naturally evolve, and sometimes and usually things evolve for the better. So I'm all for Cam Newton. I love the way he plays. I like that he's brash. I like that he's confident. And I like that he has fun playing the game, because it translates on the screen, man. It pops off the screen. It makes me laugh and get excited when he makes big plays, because I see him getting excited and making big plays. And, I have to wonder that if this was a white quarterback that was doing this, would people say, oh, it's just his passion. It's refreshing to see that he cares about the game and he takes everything so personally, as opposed to the narrative that Cam Newton has right now.
No, absolutely. And just one more brief thought on this, John, before you move us on. Before I move us on, I think. Look, in terms of on the field, Cam Newton, I mean, anybody who's afraid that he's quote-unquote changing the game for the world, we heard that about Michael Vick. We
Right.
heard that about Colin Kaepernick. We heard that about a number of other quarterbacks, most of them, coincidentally, also African-American. But look, it's not like Cam Newton is a run-first quarterback. I mean, that guy
Right.
can stand. I mean, we saw week after week this season, that guy with a cast of receivers that you and I think, called the worst in football during our NFL preview show
Right.
4 months ago. He was able to stand back there in the pocket and just complete pass after pass. I mean, his stats this year are unbelievable. Now, he is, of course, able to combine that with an incredible set of legs, and his ability to run and the power that he has is really unmatched in the NFL. But he is not a Michael Vick style quarterback, John. So anybody out there who thinks that he's threatening, the in the pocket quarterback, maybe he is to a degree because he's adding that other element. But the notion that he's solely a runner and that he's defiling the quarterback position somehow because he's not throwing the ball, that's complete bullshit in my book.
Yeah, and I agree. I completely agree with you there. And unfortunately, the color of his skin, for people that don't follow the game very closely, he has to get away. He has to try to break through that stereotype, which is really unfortunate, because a lot of people who aren't progressive with their thinking socially would see Cam Newton and think, oh, you're right, he's a run first quarterback.
Right.
He's fast. He's not smart. Which is totally a shame. He relies on his athleticism, and that's absolutely ridiculous. And I want to make one other point, Ben, and then you can move us on here, just to kind of sum up what we were talking about before, that for a lot of the people in this country that aren't racist, Ben, but maybe aren't as advanced in this area, and haven't evolved to being, to thinking that everything is completely equal in a way. I think that they see the quarterback position as the only position where white players sort of dominate it. And white players are the majority in that position. And I think maybe a lot of people don't want to see it change where African Americans dominate that position as well. And, therefore, there's going to be the majority of the players in the league would be African American, and the one position that has been dominated by white players in the past would then be taken over by African Americans as well. And I want to, of course, point out that that is absolutely not the way I feel, but I think that is just possibly the narrative for a lot of fans around the NFL, especially the ones that are 40, 50, 60-year-old, middle-aged white men, middle America type of people, your blue-collar, hardworking Americans.
Right. Right. Yeah, and you're right. And usually, of course, very few people will admit that outright. So what they do is come up with smoke screens, code words, basically saying, "Oh, I don't like that guy. He's too cocky. He's too brash. He's too whatever." When the reality is, the underlying sentiment is exactly, I think, what you just laid out. So, John, moving on the field as far as Cam Newton goes, I mean, this is a pretty simple topic we can talk about here for just a couple of minutes. Does Denver's defense have a chance at slowing this guy down and slowing down this Carolina offense? I mean, as I just mentioned, we had talked about earlier in the season, neither of us, I think, even picked Carolina to make the playoffs. A lot of people didn't, just because they don't have a lot of offensive playmakers on paper, and their best one, Kelvin Benjamin, got hurt before the season even started. But look, Greg Olsen stepped up. Their running game has been solid. Cam Newton has made a star out of guys like Ted Ginn, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I mean, when you see what they were able to do against Seattle, what they were able to do against Arizona, two of the top defenses in the NFL, along with the Broncos, of course, it's amazing. They look like they're almost an unstoppable juggernaut offensively, and that's not something I think anybody really expected heading into the regular season. So, look, we've got a pretty classic matchup here in terms of an offense that's been absolutely on fire for pretty much the entire year and seems to even be peaking now in the playoffs, which is a dangerous thing if you're Denver, going up against Denver, which has the number one ranked defense in the NFL. So it's that classic offense versus defensive matchup on that side of the equation. John, is there a game plan for Denver to slow down Cam Newton, and will it work in your view?
Yeah, so this is the way I see it. I don't know what other analysts have been talking about. I haven't watched anything. There's one thing going for Denver, is that Cam Newton has played a lot better at home this year than he has on the road. And although this won't be a road game, this won't be a home game either. So I think that maybe they could look at that a little bit and think that they might at least have some hope. I mean, he's been fantastic in both places, but with his numbers, he has been better at home. But the way I stop Carolina, Ben, if I'm Denver, and really it's this simple. You have to stop Carolina on first and second down. You can't let Jonathan Stewart get going. You have to take the rushing game away from them and put them in third and long situations. Because Denver has such an amazing pass rush that if you put Carolina in third and long, Denver can therefore get after the quarterback. And I think if you start to pressure Cam Newton a little bit and maybe hit him a little bit and rattle him, you might have a chance here because he hasn't really been touched these entire playoffs. The offensive line has been playing very good football. And like you had mentioned before, Cam Newton is not a run-first quarterback.
Right.
So the pass rush is it's very important here. And you have a guy like Von Miller, and, this entire defense is extremely athletic. But you have guys on the defensive line that can catch Cam Newton if he does run. So it's not like, Cam, if he gets outside and gets away from the pocket, is going to be unstoppable because you have athletic, dominant players on defense that can match up with him athletically. So I think that they actually have a better shot of at least containing Cam Newton than maybe most people will give them credit for. You're not going to stop him, but you're going to try to contain him at least. But yeah, I think it's getting them in third and long situations and really trying to tee off on him and rush the quarterback and put pressure on him as much as possible because these receivers are not going to be able to get separation from these corners.
No, they will not.
And so if you make Cam Newton have to throw off his back foot or throw on the run or be very uncomfortable in the pocket where maybe he releases the ball, a half a second earlier than he'd like to, these receivers are not going to be able to create separation within the first second and a half or 2 seconds of them getting off the line. So in that situation, if Cam feels like he has to force the ball earlier, that's when these Denver cornerbacks might be able to, force a couple mistakes and have a couple interceptions. Since he doesn't have that go-to receiver that you could just throw the ball up to and, he might be able to come down with it. So I think that's how you would at least slow them down if you're Denver.
No, I totally agree, and I won't add too much to that because I think you were absolutely spot on. To me, it just comes down not solely, but mostly to the pass rush. I mean, that was the key in the AFC Championship game for Denver against New England. They just battered Tom Brady around like a pinball for pretty much that entire game, had him knocked on his ass more than he'd been for the entire season. And as you said, Cam Newton really hasn't had to face much of that this year. Now, look, they're different quarterbacks. I mean, Tom Brady is a guy, whenever you see in most cases, whenever you see a pass rush coming at Tom Brady, he's on the ground before he gets hit because he's not big, he's not strong enough in most cases to get away from a pass rush or to withstand a hit. I mean, Cam Newton is more of the Ben Roethlisberger type in that regard, where he can stand in there and he can absorb a hit from a Von Miller, for example, and he can potentially spin away, get away, throw the ball even while somebody's hanging off of him. So Denver's pass rush, I think, is going to have to be even more prolific than it was in that AFC Championship game against New England. That's saying something because they were damn good in that game. I think that if they're able to do that, John, then everything else is going to fall into place. But you can't get out there, especially early in the game, first, second quarter. If you start letting Jonathan Stewart, as you said, if he starts ripping off 7-8 yard runs on first or second down, and then Cam Newton's in a second and 2, second and 3.
Oh yeah, they're fucked.
Then they're fucked. They have no chance. So I think at that point, it's getting him into third and long is going to be the key. And if the pass rush, they can do that, and the pass rush can get there and can actually take him down and not let him get outside the pocket, not let him run downfield for big gains, especially in the red zone, then I think Denver is going to be okay. But one thing they certainly can't afford, John, the defense in the first half is going to have to bring their A game. Because if they fall behind, as Carolina, has been prone to do to people, 31-0 against Seattle, for example, they blew out Arizona early in that game. Denver, with all of Peyton Manning's faults that we detailed earlier, I don't think they want to be playing catch up down 24-3 or 28-7 or something like that to Carolina, where you're expecting Peyton Manning to just throw bombs and score 4 touchdowns for you. That's not going to work for Denver. So I think if there's one unit that the pressure is really on, John, it's definitely that Denver defense.
Oh, absolutely. And I was talking to you, I think yesterday about this, that and I don't want to get too far ahead, maybe a little teaser here because we will be going over some prop bets very shortly, but that's why I would, potentially take Carolina, but minus 14 or minus 17, because you can take a bet like that where you increase the line by like 10 points, but you get maybe 5, 6 to 1 on your money. And I think that isn't a bad bet because, like you said, if Carolina gets up early, like they've done in both of the playoff games previous to this.
And throughout the regular season.
Right, and they get up 14-0, 17-0, something like that. I mean, Denver's screwed, and they could get absolutely blown out here. So that's why, I think for the odds that you're getting for a bet like that, I think it's not a bad one to take, but that's just going on the point, like you said, that Denver's defense needs to be very good early for sure. But Ben, moving on real quick, we're talking about Denver's defense, of course, but Denver's offense is also going to be very important in this game, and they have not looked great for pretty much the entire season overall, regular and postseason, largely due to not great quarterback play and C.J. Anderson being a little bit of a disappointment this year off of his really breakout year last year. And Carolina's defense, Ben, is fantastic. They've been very good all year. So, Ben, if you were Denver's offensive coordinator, how would you attack Carolina and their defense? What is the best formula for Denver to be able to score points this Sunday to have a chance to win and potentially match up with Carolina's offense?
Man, it's tough because, as we detailed, Peyton Manning at this point can't really throw the ball downfield, so I don't think you're going to see a lot of shots over the top in this game, especially when you're going against Josh Norman, who's probably the best cornerback in the NFL right now. So, I think that's a problem for Denver, but I also am skeptical, and I'll get your thoughts on this in a minute, that they'll be able to run the ball against this Carolina defense, which I believe is the number 2 defense in the NFL, and also up there in the top 10 against the run. So, they've been pretty stout against the run throughout this season. So I'm not sure certainly Denver's going to come out and try to do that, especially early in the game. But I don't have a lot of confidence that's going to be successful. So I think what you're left with, if you're game planning offensively for Denver to go up against this defense, John, is I think you're looking at a lot of short to intermediate throws from Peyton Manning. You're looking at some screen passes. You're looking at some dump-off passes. You're looking at maybe a high-paced, almost a 2-minute drill style offense, some no-huddle. Peyton Manning, of course, is famous for that. He's been one of the best of all time not running a quick offense. I think maybe you try to do that, try to get some chunks lined up, get some 7-8 yard passes, one after the other, put Carolina back on their heels, maybe try to tire them out a little bit and get some scores piled up. It's going to be crucial for Denver, John, to get some points on the board early in this game. And if they're able to do that, especially in the first and second quarter, with some 6, 7, 8, 9-minute drives that result in touchdowns and keep Cam Newton off the field and on the sideline, that's going to be the key for them. So whether they're able to do that with a running game, which I'm skeptical about, or they do that with some short passes that keep the clock moving and get them downfield on long drives to score touchdowns, that to me is going to have to be the key, because A, you don't want to get into a shootout with Carolina and Cam Newton, and B, I don't think Peyton Manning is capable of doing that anyway with those type of throws. So to me, John, that's going to be the key: some short, intermediate passes and a quick pace, at least early on, if they're going to have a prayer.
Yeah, I agree with you. You made some great points there. Denver definitely needs to control the clock. That's for sure. And by doing that, of course, you rest your defense, and the defense is the most important unit for them in this game. And so if you let them rest, they have a better chance of being dominant. See, I do disagree with you a little bit, because to me, the run defense for the Panthers is their weakness, if you're looking between the run and the pass. So I do think Denver should attack them on the ground, because you are protecting Peyton Manning by doing that. And if you can run the ball 25 to 30 plus times in this game, I would look for even 30 plus. You not only control the clock, you not only set the tempo for the game, but you then set up play action. And Peyton Manning has always been a very good play action quarterback, and that might be able to get him to be able to drive the ball down the field a little bit more.
Yep.
Because usually when you run a play action, you have a little bit more time in the pocket, and if any of those corners bite on that, or safeties, it would be an easier throw for Manning to make, down the field. So I think that's the key for them, because they love running the ball anyway, at least recently. So I'm assuming that's what they'll probably try to do. But in terms of a passing game, I like your call with quick passes, the short to intermediate passing game. To me, I think they have to attack the slot here. They have to attack the middle of the field with Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. And you have to move these guys around constantly, because what you don't want to happen is lining Demaryius Thomas out on the end and have him go against Josh Norman the entire game.
He'll get shut down.
Yeah, for the most part, because he's done that to most receivers this year. He hasn't been as great in the playoffs, but I think that's been because of game flow. I don't really put that against him. So if you move Demaryius around, if you move Emmanuel Sanders around, I think you can have some success. And Emmanuel Sanders is extremely quick. So if you're looking for that short to intermediate passing game, if you put Emmanuel Sanders in the slot, move him around a little bit, get him in motion, then I think he could get open for a lot of those passes. And because of his speed and game-breaking ability, and same with Demaryius Thomas, if Carolina misses a tackle or two, they're off to the races.
Sure.
And that would be fantastic for Denver, of course, obviously. So, yeah, if I'm Denver's offensive coordinator, if I'm Peyton Manning, that's how I would attack them. I would try to run the ball successfully and then play action off of that, short to intermediate passes, the screen game, and get your dominant wide receivers to move around so they're not stuck on Norman Island, as it's been this year for sure. So, Ben, with all of that analysis and spot-on analysis and one-of-a-kind, unique analysis to the Guilty Pleasures podcast, let's get to our official picks for the game. And we don't really need to give our picks for why much, just short answers here because we've broken down the game so much. Ben, the line for this game is the Panthers are favored by 6 points.
Right.
And the over-under is 45.5. The game came out with the Panthers being favored by 4.5. So already it's jumped 1.5 points, which is a lot. And that shows that a lot of people are going with Carolina because of their dominant postseason so far. So Ben, this is it for all the marbles, man. Who are you taking in this game against the spread, and do you think this game will go over or under 45.5 points?
Well, John, look, no disrespect to Peyton Manning, and as much as I would like to see him win here, I'm taking Carolina.
Okay.
I like Carolina here. I think Cam Newton's going to prove to be too much, even for that Denver defense, and I think Peyton Manning, unfortunately, is going to be exposed and is not going to have a great game. So I do like Carolina to win by a touchdown plus, possibly more. I fear it could get ugly. And for that reason, I'm going to take the over on the 45.5 because I see Carolina putting up potentially 30 points, 30 plus points, as they've done in both of their playoff games so far this postseason, and as they've done to a lot of teams throughout the regular season. So I think when it all comes down to it, John, I see something along the lines of a 34 to 17, or maybe a 34 to 20, something in that neighborhood win for Carolina. I think they're going to win potentially by a lot here, but they'll definitely win by more than 6, and I think they'll put up enough points. They'll be the main contributor, I think, to getting this game over 45.5. So I've got Carolina, and I've got the over in the 45.5.
All right, I dig it. Yeah, and quickly off of what you said, I think for all of our listeners, if they decide to bet on Carolina this Sunday, if you're going to do a parlay where you bet both the game and the over-under, I think if you take Carolina, you're going to have to take the over. Right. Because, Carolina's going to have to win by 7 points. So if Carolina scores 27 points or more, if Denver scores 20 points or more and Carolina is still going to cover that 7 points, then that game is automatically over. So if you think Denver is going to put up 17 to 20 points, but you think Carolina is going to cover, you definitely have to take the over there. So I think for all of our listeners, if you're going to take Carolina, I'd say take the over with that. I completely agree with you, Ben. But in terms of my pick here, I'm going to go against you. I am going to take Denver and the points. I think I am one of the few people in America that is taking Denver here to cover. I think this is pretty simple. First of all, I think Denver's defense can do a pretty good job. I think they are better than any of the defenses the Panthers have faced so far, with all due respect to Seattle and to Arizona. And, it's interesting, Ben. When everyone seems to go one way, and when everyone seems to think it's a sure bet that one team is going to win and one team is going to cover, I've noticed that usually the opposite happens. For that reason, I think Denver covers here. And look, 6 points is a lot. It's a lot on a neutral field. I just think that in a Super Bowl where you have two defenses that are very good, it's easy to see this game being close. It's hard to imagine Denver's defense getting, abused here. It's hard to see them getting lit up by the Panthers because they are so good. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to shut them out or anything like that, but I just think Denver has enough to keep it close. To me, this was a hard game to pick, but I could still see Carolina winning, but I think this game is going to be in the 24 to 20 range. I'm hoping it's a close game as well, so it'll be more entertaining to watch. But if you are taking Denver getting 6 points, I think therefore you have to take the under in this game, because if Denver is going to keep this close, I believe that means their defense is going to do very well and do a good job of containing Cam Newton and the Panthers offense. So if you're parlaying and you're going with me and you're going to take Denver, I would parlay it with the under at 45.5.
Well, fair enough, John. I guess we'll see back here next week on the Guilty Pleasures podcast to see who was right and who was wrong. But now, if you are going to be betting on this game, there's plenty more to bet on than just the game itself and the over-under on the point total. John, we've identified a number of prop bets, and there are plenty of them that you can find online.
Over 500.
Ridiculous things to bet on for the game. John, why don't you explain, first of all, to anybody out there listening who might not know how these work? Just give a brief rundown. Then we're going to roll through quickly here. Just 10 prop bets that we've identified that we think you can make some money on.
Yeah, so prop bets are about usually individual things that happen in a game, and they're really anything that isn't the spread of the game and the over under. It's pretty much everything else that you can bet on. Bookies and sports sites, they come up with these things, of course, to be able to get more action. And therefore, they've come up with, as I had said, at least 500 of these because everyone loves to bet the Super Bowl, and the more things that people bet, the more money that Vegas and these sports books make.
Right.
So that's why they have a ton of other things that you can bet on, because if they just had the regular spread and the over-under, they're not going to get as much action compared to a normal week when there are 15 games that are being played. There's just one. So these range from everything that you can think of: the length of the national anthem, the coin toss, what the score is going to be at halftime, by how much, alternate spreads, where you can get better odds on your money. There are so many things to potentially bet on here. So we picked 10 out that we thought were maybe the easiest to digest. So we're going to go through these one by one. It's worth noting here that what we are going to do is Ben and I are hypothetically going to bet $1 on each one of these prop bets. And whoever ends up with the most money at the end is going to win between Ben and I, and owe that other person a nice steak dinner.
Yes.
So, and by the way, before we do these, listen to what we do here, guys, and we'll post these on Twitter. And please tweet us your prop bets, who you would pick in each of these. Tweet us who you like in the game and the over/under. And let's see how you do against Ben and I. This is a good way to get involved and see if your knowledge matches ours. So we will put our picks on Twitter, and be sure to retweet that and give us your picks as well. So Ben, let's hop into the first one here.
Let's do it.
The first prop bet is the first scoring play of the game. Is it going to be a touchdown or a field goal or safety, Ben?
I'm going touchdown, John.
Okay.
I'm taking touchdown on this one.
Okay, I'm going to go with a field goal here.
Okay.
I just think the game might start a little bit conservative. Both teams, trying to feel each other out in such a high-pressure game.
Fair enough. So we're on opposite sides of this already. I like it. John,
Yes.
Next up here, the largest point lead of the game by either team will be either over 14.5 or under 14.5. Look, I mean, obviously you know what I'm taking here. I'm taking over 14.5. I think Carolina is going to win potentially by that much. So I think at some point they will be up by somewhere in the neighborhood of 14, 15 to 20 points. So I'm taking the over.
And I am taking the under, of course, because I took Denver in this game. The next prop bet here is the team to commit the most turnovers. The Panthers or the Broncos, Ben?
I'm taking the Broncos here. I think Peyton Manning is going to throw a couple of interceptions, and I think the Carolina Panthers offense might have a day. And Cam Newton, I'm not sure if he's going to throw any picks at all. So I think 1 or 2 turnovers probably for Denver, possibly 0 for Carolina. So Denver makes more turnovers here.
I'm going to hedge my bet a little bit here. I'm going to take Denver as well, just because of the numbers. I mean, Denver has had, and Peyton Manning has had, many more turnovers this year than Cam Newton. So I actually think that's a relatively safe bet. So I'm going to hedge my bet and take Denver.
So will there be a scoreless quarter in the game, John? Yes or no?
I'm going to say no. I don't think so. I think both of these teams are at least capable of putting up a field goal in a quarter. I think it's very hard to have a scoreless quarter overall in the NFL. So I'm going to go with no.
I'm going to go with no as well. I think, obviously, given the fact that I took the over on the 45.5, I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. So I can't see there being a scoreless quarter. I'm going to say no.
Right. The highest scoring half, Ben, is it going to be the first half or the second half?
That is tough. I'm I'm going to go with the second half on this one, John. I think the Carolina, while they may put some points up early on Denver, I think they're going to come alive in the second half, and I think that's where we might see Peyton Manning make some mistakes when the pressure is the hottest on him. So I'm saying the highest scoring half is going to be the second half, largely due to Carolina.
I'm going with the second half as well. I think it's possible that both teams come out relatively conservative because of it's such a big game, and I think they're going to be feeling each other out a lot in the first half. And in the second half, I think things will open up. And if a team is down a good amount in the second half, they will be throwing a lot and trying to catch up, and will be scoring at least some points, even if they don't matter. So I think the second half definitely will have more points scored.
Agreed. John, total interceptions in the game, over 1.5 or under 1.5. I'm going to say over 1.5 here. Not sure if Cam Newton's going to have any mistakes in this game, but I could definitely see Peyton Manning throwing a couple of picks here. So I'm going to go over 1.5 interceptions for the game.
I agree. I'm going over 1.5. I mean, this seems almost like a guarantee in my book because I think Cam could throw one. I could see that since Denver's D is so good. And I think we can both agree that Peyton Manning is definitely good for at least one. So this seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm going the over.
Agreed.
The next one, which is just complete guess here. The coin toss. Head or tails, Ben?
I'm saying tails on this one, John.
I'm going tails too. Never fails, my friend.
Well, yeah, the one that's a complete 50-50 bet with no insight needed whatsoever. We agree on that as well. Welcome to the Guilty Pleasures podcast. John, the total number of penalties in the game, over 12.5 or under?
I'm going to say under 12.5. I think the officials let them play a little bit more in this game since there is such a huge spotlight on it and there are going to be so many viewers. I think the NFL doesn't want to slow the game down and have it be an extremely ugly game with a lot of penalties. So I think they'll let them play a little bit as they should. So I'm going to go under here.
Yeah, I'd love to disagree with you, but I got to go under here as well. That's a fair amount of penalties for the Super Bowl. Now, these are two, pretty aggressive defenses, so maybe you get a few pass interference calls here and there, but I just don't see it. I think under 12.5 penalties for this game for sure.
Ben, the team to score first here, the Carolina Panthers or the Denver Broncos?
I'm going to say the Carolina Panthers. I think Cam Newton is going to get them on the board early. If they get the ball first, I think they're going to go down and score. So, look, obviously I expect Carolina to put up a lot of points in this game. I think that's going to start early in the first quarter. So I say Carolina scores before Denver. I'm
going to go with Denver here because most of the players on the Denver Broncos have been in the Super Bowl before. They're not going to be nervous. They know what to expect during the week. During these 2 weeks, they know how to handle themselves and their bodies and their workout regimens and all that stuff. So I think Carolina could be a little bit nervous. Things might be a little off for them in the beginning. I obviously don't know that for sure, but that's how I could see it playing out. So I think, at least in the very beginning, Denver could take a small lead. I think Denver kicks off the game with a field goal, so I'm going to take Denver here.
All right, that's fair enough. So, John, on the flip side of that, the team to score last, Carolina or Denver, I'm going to go with Denver on this one. I think I can see them getting a garbage time touchdown, even if they're down by 14, 17, 20 points late in this game. So, or hell, maybe it comes down, maybe I'm totally wrong, it comes down to a last minute play and Peyton Manning pulls it out for Denver. But either way, I think Denver's going to be the team to score last in this game.
I agree with you. I'm going to go with Denver. I could see Carolina winning this game. I just think that Denver will cover. So if that's the case, absolutely, I could see Denver being the last team to score, to maybe cut it to 4 points or something like that. Right. So I'm going to go with Denver, at least, and the chance, like you said, that they might be kicking a field goal or scoring a touchdown to in fact win the game.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was some serious football breakdown from the Guilty Pleasures podcast. You got all the keys you need to know heading into the Super Bowl on Sunday, and as well as a lot of fun prop bets. So, John, we will, of course, keep track of all this, as you said, and revisit how wrong I'm sure we are going to be next week here on the show.
Absolutely. No, not absolutely. We are going to be totally right on everything we picked. Once again, to our listeners, if you want to get involved in the podcast, a lot of people have been asking. They want to come on the show. They want to know how to get involved. This is your chance to get involved. We are going to tweet who we took, our picks, and all of our picks for the prop bets. We ask you to please do your picks as well. Pick them what you think is going to happen and tweet that back to us. Use the hashtag The Guilty Pleasures Podcast and see how you do against us. And, hey, if you beat us, we'll admit you won. You have more football knowledge, at least for one episode of the Guilty Pleasures Podcast, than we did. So, great time to get involved. We are at the GP Podcast on Twitter, so no excuses. Join in on the fun here.
No excuses. And with that, John, with our NFL segment in the books, it's time now to move to one of our favorite segments of the week. This is the infamous, the well-known, the unable to be duplicated Scumbag of the Week.
Scumbag.
It's where we call out deviants, miscreants, and general scourges on society from any walk of life where we can find them. If you're a scumbag, you are going to be called out on the Guilty Pleasures Podcast. And John, we've got a doozy this week. This is courtesy of techtimes.com, but this story is all over the place, all over Seattle media and now all over the national media as well. The first few paragraphs here to give you a flavor for this story. A woman who rose to fame for her cancer survival in Seattle is under fire for allegedly lying about her breast cancer diagnosis. Tracy Dart from Seattle, who had raised over $400,000 over the past 10 years for the Susan G. Komen Foundation, of course, one of the most famous and best, really, cancer advocacy groups out there. Tracy Dart claimed to be a 3-time breast cancer survivor and obtained local celebrity status in Seattle, with many entities gathering funds on her behalf, using her name, using her likeness. Now she admits she was never diagnosed with the disease. The story says that Matthew Welch, who owns a Volkswagen dealership in Seattle, was one of the businesses that had contributed money to Miss Dart for her breast cancer survivor efforts on behalf of the Susan G. Komen Foundation. He says that he was told by members of Team Tracy, which is the cancer group that she had set up, that it was all a fraud, it was a fake. He said the first words that I heard were, "She doesn't have cancer," and she never had cancer, and it just blew my mind. So, John, this is, of course, serious scumbag behavior. Not a lot really to laugh about with this one, especially for all of our listeners out there, like myself, who know and had friends and family members who died from cancer and lost their battle to cancer. And so to do that, basically to make it up for your own celebrity status, to achieve some sort of fame, to get your name out there, to get your picture in the local newspapers, is just beyond disgusting. And then to defraud a group like the Susan G. Komen Foundation that raises so much money and does so many good things for cancer survivors just takes this whole thing to a different level. So, man, not a whole lot to say about this, to be honest with you, John. Tracy Dart is a massive scumbag, and the fact that she was able to keep this up for 10 years and just continue to look people in the eye, to take their money, and to hang out constantly year after year with other people who actually had been diagnosed with breast cancer, been battling breast cancer, other forms of cancer, that she was able to lie to all of them and say that she had gone through that when in fact she hasn't, is the pinnacle of scumbag behavior, John. This woman is going to be in the early running, I think, for Scumbag of the Year.
Yeah, this is absolutely disgusting. I don't know what other stance you could take here. I guess once in a while for our Scumbags of the Week, maybe you could play devil's advocate and give a different point of view, but this is horrible. And I don't know what the hell this woman was thinking. I don't know what Tracy was thinking. This is beyond horrible. This is probably one of the worst things you can do. And cancer is one of the most serious problems and diseases that we're facing in our society right now. And as you said, everyone on earth pretty much knows someone that's been affected by cancer. And to kind of disrespect them, I think, in a way, by doing this, is absolutely terrible. And I think that's the real narrative here about what is going on. I'd love to hear the truth from Tracy, if she comes out with a statement or something, for why she did this. Was it because of what you said, to get fame and to make herself feel important? Or was it just to have another way to raise more money for this foundation? Neither way is acceptable, Ben, by all means. So I'm not defending either of these. I think it would be a little less heinous if she did it just because she believed so much in this cause and she wanted to raise money for it and she thought this was the best way to do it. But it's still not okay. And if she did this for the fame, I mean, that's just the absolute worst possible answer that she could give.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear what she has to say. You know, of course, we'd love to have her come on the podcast to give her side of this because, you know, I don't know how she can defend herself, but it would be interesting to see what her thought process was in doing something so heinous and something so disrespectful and disgusting like this. So, I mean, Tracy is a massive scumbag, a terrible human being, showed horrible judgment, which seems to be the one constant between through all of our scumbags of the week. And look, you know, we say it sometimes, Ben, and then I'll kick it back to you, that some of our scumbags do something in the heat of the moment and
Right.
they make a bad decision, and that of course is bad, but you know, could maybe be chalked up to making a mistake. But this was premeditated by Tracy Dart.
And kept up for 10 years.
Exactly. So for 10 years, she didn't realize that this might be a bad thing that she was doing. So that makes her a gigantic scumbag and a terrible human being and someone who has the worst judgment I maybe have ever seen in my entire life. So she deserves all the press, bad press that she's going to get from this. And she certainly deserves to be our scumbag of the week.
Yeah, no question. And just moving forward, you have to wonder if there's some fallout here that now, you know, whenever you hear about a local cancer survivor or somebody trying to raise money, is there going to be a thought in the back of your mind that maybe they're lying? So that's kind of a shame because she's not just, bringing bad press, as you say, to herself, not just kind of defaming, all these local businesses that contributed money, putting the Susan G. Komen Foundation in a bad spot. But now she's going to sow a seed of doubt in people's mind if they hear about somebody who had cancer. So that's a damn shame.
That is a excellent point, Ben. An excellent point because, you know, her defense might be, well, I've raised, $414,000 for a good cause. But as you mentioned, it's possible that she could end up hurting Susan D. Komen Foundation more than that by the people who would have donated but won't now because of something like this. So, will people donate? Would people who would have donated money, would that have exceeded the $414,000 that now will not donate money? So, she could maybe defend herself or lie to herself that way. But, by bringing up that point, Ben, which was excellent, that would be the one that we could say to her that she could have hurt Susan G. Komen and the raising money for cancer in the long run because of this.
Absolutely.
So, great point by you. And Tracy Dart, of course, as always, the invitation is open for you to come on the Guilty Pleasures podcast and try to defend yourself, but that will be unsuccessful. So, Ben, that was Scumbag of the Week. Now, moving on here, we are going to move on to another segment that we love called Swipe Right, Swipe Left. And on this segment, we pose 5 quick hit statements. And Ben, you and I either agree with the statement and swipe right, or we disagree with the statement and swipe left and give a quick explanation on why. So let's hop right in here to the first one for episode 28 of the Guilty Pleasures podcast. The statement is this: the Oakland Raiders should move to Las Vegas.
Ooh.
Ben, I'm going to answer this one and keep it short. I'm going to swipe left. And that is because Oakland fans are hardcore and they are passionate and they support their team through thick and thin because the team has been horrible for the last decade plus. And they still show up to games and they still care about their team a lot. And there are a lot less supportive fan bases in the NFL for sure. So I don't think Oakland deserves to lose their football team. But at the same time, I think a team in Las Vegas would be pretty damn cool. But I don't think it should be the Raiders that move there. So I'm swiping left.
Man, I'm going to swipe right on this one, John, only because it looks like, and I totally agree with everything you said about Oakland, but it looks like they're going to be on their way out of Oakland at some point, if not next year, the year after that, with the Rams and the Chargers now both apparently moving to LA. Looks like the Oakland Raiders might be looking for a new home somewhere else, so this rumor had kind of surfaced that they might be looking at Las Vegas. I think Las Vegas should have a team. I agree with you in the sense that the Raiders might not be necessarily the best fit. Would maybe transplant the Jacksonville Jaguars or somebody else
Right.
to Las Vegas. But it looks like the Raiders are the team that's in line. And so if the NFL is looking to make this happen, it looks like the Raiders are going to be their best bet. It would be a hell of a lot more fun if Al Davis were still alive. That's for damn sure. But still, I will swipe right. I'd like to see the Raiders in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Sounds good.
John, moving on here. Now, this is, of course, we're recording this on Tuesday evening, just not even 24 hours removed from the Iowa caucuses last night. So the Democrats and Republicans, of course, dominating everybody's discussion, water cooler conversation today at work. But, John, the statement is this. In addition to the Republicans and Democrats, we need a legitimate third political party in America. I'm swiping right on this statement. Now, of course, you might say there are third parties. Of course, there's the Green Party, the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party, the Right to Life Party. There are a million different parties. The Communist Party still exists in the United States. But none of them are viable. We never have a third option. We haven't had a real legitimate independent in a number of years since Ralph Nader, going back a decade now. And I think that hurts because a lot of times you look at both candidates on the Republican and Democratic side and say, whatever. So I think having another option, at least one more, would be good for our political system, would give people more choices, and would expand the debate and maybe just inject some fresh ideas. So, John, I am swiping right pretty hard on there being a third party in America.
I agree with everything you said. I am swiping right as well. Ben, more options are always better when it comes to stuff like this. And, I think the system right now seems broken to me. So I would absolutely be down for having a third political party be added, and like you said, a legitimate one,
Right.
one that would be on the level of the Democrats and Republicans. So I'm certainly swiping right to that.
Absolutely.
Ben, the third statement on swipe right, swipe left is Vince McMahon, the owner of the WWE, should run for political office. Ben, I am swiping left hard here. It should be noted that his wife ran for, was it the Senate, Ben?
Said it twice.
Yes, and I believe lost both times.
Yeah.
So I am swiping left here, and it's pretty simple. He can't even run the WWE successfully anymore. So if he can't fix the WWE's problems, which we document every single week on our podcast, how can he fix America's problems? So, therefore, I'm swiping left.
Wow. I can't argue with that, John, but I'm still swiping right that Vince McMahon should run for political office solely because of the entertainment value that I think it would provide. Do I think that he has, good policy solutions for immigration or healthcare reform? Probably not. But, I mean, look, we've seen Donald Trump, say what you will about him, and his blatant racism and misogyny. Still, he's gone from the entertainment world to the political world fairly successfully, and is entertaining, even if he's usually wrong and bigoted in his point of view. I think Vince McMahon would bring that to the table times 1,000. So, just as someone who loves journalism and loves politics, I'm swiping right just because I would damn sure love to cover Vince McMahon's political campaign.
That's fair. That's fair. I just don't want a heel president. That's for sure.
Maybe he'd make a babyface turn halfway through his first term.
Maybe. Ben, the fourth statement here on swipe right, swipe left is Valentine's Day, of course, is coming up for all the lovers out there. Ben,
Yeah.
Flowers are a lame gift for Valentine's Day. Very quickly, I'm going to swipe left. Or excuse me, I'm going to swipe right. As I think flowers are a lame gift. It's not creative, Ben.
No.
It really isn't. And I think it's played out. And I don't think it shows that you've put a lot of thought into your gift or present for your significant other. I do think, though, if it's accompanied by something else, flowers are fine. I think it's nice if that's not the main thing that you are giving your significant other. So if it accompanies something bigger and more creative, then I'm fine with it. But if flowers are the only gift you're giving, I think that's pretty damn lame. So I'm swiping right.
Yeah, I'm going to swipe right here as well for all the reasons that you said. I will offer one caveat, and that is if you're going to do this and you're going to give flowers to your significant other, go ahead and have it sent to her office, for example, just because that always seems to go over fairly well with women because her office friends can see that her man cares about her enough and goes to the time and effort to have flowers sent to her at work. So in that case, the flowers themselves are still pretty lame, but the actual process of getting them sent to her office and surprising her can be kind of cool. So I guess I'm sort of pushing on this question, John, but as a general matter, flowers are absolutely lame, so I'm swiping right.
Damn right.
No, and dude, you are damn right. That's for damn sure. We'll put that on a T-shirt soon.
We will
John,
be.
The final statement here: swipe right, swipe left. He's out injured right now, but man, WWE would sure love to have him back. The statement is: John Cena will wrestle at WrestleMania 32. John, I'm going out on a limb here, and this is going to go against all my years of medical training that I have. I'm swiping right. I think he's going to wrestle at WrestleMania 32, even though he was supposed to be out 4 to 6 months and was just injured in late December. I think this guy is going to come back only because we've seen it before. We've seen him when he's supposed to be out for 9 months, come back after 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy just seems to have genetics that are unrivaled, really, maybe by Adrian Peterson. That's about the only person I can think of. But this guy can recover from injuries faster than just about anybody, and you know that he's motivated to be there for WWE's biggest pay-per-view ever in Dallas at WrestleMania 32. So, John, I'm going out on a limb. I'm swiping right.
I agree with everything you said. I am swiping right as well. You can never bet against John Cena. And he is notoriously a very fast healer, and he works his ass off. This is his life. And so he probably surprises so many people with his rehab, and he probably spends 24 hours a day doing it so he can get back as fast as he can. His work ethic is incredible and unquestionable. So I think he's going to come back, and for maybe no other reason than the WWE desperately needs him to.
Oh, they do.
And that'll segue us into the WWE talk coming up in just a second. But so many injuries on the roster that the big name that is John Cena, they need him there to sell more tickets and to be in a main event match because there doesn't seem to be many candidates to fill that role. So for that reason, I'm going out on a limb as well and swiping right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can all hope that that is in fact the case, because having that star power of John Cena, who's really unrivaled in terms of mainstream notoriety, maybe by The Rock, but that's about it. So I think having him there would be a major benefit for WWE when you're trying to sell that many tickets. John, let's move into the WWE here. We're going to go into our big takeaways for the week, but just very briefly here and we mentioned this at the beginning of the show. Bret Hart announced, of course, that he is battling prostate cancer. Again, cancer is something that's affected everybody. Everybody knows somebody, whether it's a family member, a friend, or in this case, somebody that you've kind of looked up to from afar. A terrible thing, and we wish Bret Hart, of course, all the best. But, John, briefly, I've been a huge Bret Hart fan. He's one of my favorites of all time. I grew up watching his matches. He's been involved in my opinion, some of the greatest matches that I've ever seen. From the Iron Man match against Shawn Michaels to the famous, I Quit match against Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13 that Stone Cold, repeatedly says was the launching point for his career. He might have never gotten to where he was able to get to without that match against Bret Hart. He, of course, had a massive impact both in ring and out of the ring with the Montreal screw job. If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have the Mr. McMahon character that, of course, was key to WWE's success. And then, again, the in-ring work has influenced so many people, so many guys today consider him to be one of the greatest of all time. And I think he really kind of turned the page, John, in professional wrestling in North America from sort of, dominated by guys like Hulk Hogan or Andre the Giant, big guys who look like they've been taking steroids for 25 years. Bret Hart was the guy that looked like he might live down the block from you. He wasn't that big, but man, in the ring, he just redefined work rate, and along with Shawn Michaels, I would say, just kind of changed everything in terms of professional wrestling, put more of the emphasis on what guys could do inside the ring and with in-match storytelling. So for all those reasons, I've grown up loving Bret Hart, and I wish him nothing but the best and hope he defeats cancer and comes back stronger than ever.
Yeah, that was very well said. So I really don't have much to add. I agree with everything you said. I would have made those points. And his influence is so huge on the industry. And like you said, so many guys have used him as an influence on their characters and especially their in-ring work because he was such a great technician. And he, like you said, he sort of brought back the actual wrestling ability,
Yeah.
and that being a huge a huge part of who would be successful in the WWE, where for a long time it had been all about the character, and now it's really starting with him. It became about the character and the in-ring work. So hopefully he'll be able to get better soon.
Absolutely, and real quickly, John, before you move us on here to our takeaways, Bret Hart also as a heel character in 1997 is one of my all-time favorite heels in the history of professional wrestling, and is responsible for probably, in my opinion, my favorite line that I've ever heard in the promo when he was doing the anti-American bit, feuding with Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, said that if you were going to give the United States of America an enema, you'd stick the hose right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is one of the greatest lines by a heel that I have ever heard in the history of professional wrestling. So he doesn't get enough credit for his promo work as well, because that's a brilliant line, a great way to get heel heat.
Absolutely. Ben, why don't you introduce us to the first takeaway from Monday Night Raw this week, and one of our main WWE talking points for episode 28.
Yeah, so we're heading toward Fastlane. We've got this triple threat match now with Dean Ambrose, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. They're going to fight to determine who's going to face Triple H for the World Championship at WrestleMania. Now, we got a taste of this angle, some angle development here, John, on Raw to start the show, with Dean Ambrose coming out and confronting Brock Lesnar. So that's interesting to me because, as everybody who listens to this podcast knows, I'm a massive Dean Ambrose fan. I'm also a massive Brock Lesnar fan, and those are two guys that really had never interacted before, near as I can tell, for the years that they've both been in the roster at the same time. So that was cool just to see them in the ring together. I think Ambrose's character of, sort of just this kind of, unpredictable guy who just keeps going no matter how much he gets hit is kind of a good foil for Lesnar. So that's interesting. The problem, John, and I'd love to get your take on this, is even though WWE opened the show with those two and tried to kind of get some heat on that aspect of the storyline, to me, they're still in the shadow of Roman Reigns. It looks like, against their better judgment, WWE is going to have Roman Reigns win this match, so I'm not really sure where this Lesnar-Ambrose angle is headed. But what do you make of that? I mean, is this the right way to handle this story, to play up Lesnar and Ambrose? And did that segment convince you, I guess, that either of them actually have a chance of winning this match at Fastlane?
Yeah, I think this is the right way to go for this situation, to play both of them up, because like you said, everyone thinks that Roman Reigns is going to win. And Roman Reigns has been the focal point of WWE television for a long time now, and people are starting to sort of revolt and turn on him again. So I think by having Lesnar and Ambrose be the focal point, probably the two most over entertainers on the roster, people are going to gravitate to that more. And by highlighting them, you build them up as threats to actually be the ones to win the match. If you highlighted Reigns every single show and he was really the main guy, then you would assume that he would be the one to win.
Right.
But if by putting more focus on the other two, you sort of level the playing field a little bit, and at least put a little bit of doubt, hopefully, in the minds of people for who, that Reigns maybe won't win this match. I don't think having this match is a good idea if you're going to have Roman Reigns win. That's for sure. And you know what? Maybe in a way, it's not a great idea, even if you wouldn't have him win. And I think it's bad. You're putting three faces in a match, and Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar are more over with all of the fans than Roman Reigns. So naturally, someone has to be booed in a match in order for people to get involved in it and get emotionally invested in the match. And so who the fuck do you think is going to get booed?
It's going to be Reigns.
It's going to be Roman Reigns. So if they're goal is to get Roman Reigns over with the fans and to have him be cheered and have his WrestleMania moment, they're failing with this. And it's going to fail. There is one thing, Ben. I think there is a chance that he doesn't win this. And I think there is more of a chance now than there was a week or two ago because, man, I think the WWE, they didn't feature him that much this week on Raw, and I think maybe WWE might consider not having him win because of the backlash that he would get. And I think, maybe this is the time where they say, you know what? WrestleMania is going to be the biggest show of all time. We're going to have so many eyes on it. Do we want Reigns to hold the title above his head with WrestleMania going off the air and him getting showered with booze? And I think they might not want that. And maybe the way to do it is to not have him in the main event and not have him win this match, concede the fact that he's not over right now, and then restart this process after WrestleMania and see if you can get him over again maybe by SummerSlam or something like that. So, and I think a good teaser to this for why there might be hope for the people that don't like Roman Reigns like you and I is what they did at the Royal Rumble. By calling an audible and having him not be one of the final two in the match. I mean, if they did that for the Royal Rumble, that certainly can give you hope that they might do that for Fastlane going into WrestleMania. So I don't think this match overall was a good idea to have these three, but having Reigns win would be a horrible idea. But for what we have right now, knowing this is going to be the main event of Fastlane, I think they've done a decent job so far getting my interest, at least for it.
Yeah, I guess I don't have as much confidence as you do in the WWE in this regard. I still think Reigns is probably going to win this match, and that's a damn shame. And one of the big reasons, in addition to the fact, of course, as you said, you're exactly right, that Reigns is just not over enough as a babyface to have that crowning WrestleMania moment. I think that would be a disaster. But also, if you're going to go down that road, you're just kind of teasing and then not delivering what I think could be a potentially good feud between Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar. I mean, maybe they end up fighting at WrestleMania, who knows? But look, I mean, I felt some excitement watching that opening segment on Raw. Again, those are two guys that had not interacted. They're both crazy over with the fans, and they seem to play off each other pretty damn well. I think more Heyman-Ambrose promos could be fantastic. So I think that's potentially a big money program, and I think they're kind of not wasting it because they can always go back to it, but they're kind of spoiling it a little bit here off the bat by having it begin with this triple threat match when even if you're right and Reigns might not win, he's still going to be a focal point, I'm sure, of the next couple episodes of Raw leading up to Fastlane, and definitely, obviously, just by virtue of being in the match, is going to take away from the Ambrose and Lesnar dynamic overall. So I like this segment in terms of, I thought it was exciting. I thought it was good. It made for good television watching Raw. But I think they could get this is a money feud to me between Ambrose and Brock Lesnar. And so I hope that this doesn't derail chances of that happening down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. It just seems like, overall, to sum this up, that the WWE has sort of boxed themselves into a corner.
They have.
Here. And, it's hard to imagine a scenario where they come out better on the other side because of it, unless, there is a Roman Reigns heel turn or even a Dean Ambrose heel turn against Roman Reigns, which I think at this point might not be a great idea because Ambrose is so over, but I think, in order for this to work really well, I think one of those two things have to happen with the lead being Roman Reigns turning heel. I think that would be a great way to go. At least it would get them out of this main event without, looking like shit because Reigns getting booed hard, for sure. Ben, the second point here, the second topic in our WWE segment. In the Fastlane pay-per-view that's coming up in a few weeks, because of this main event, the Intercontinental title will not be defended because the IC title is around the waist of Dean Ambrose, and we know that Triple H will not be performing at Fastlane because the winner of the main event is going to face him at WrestleMania. And along with that, the tag team division is stale as hell. And man, it's making it hard to watch WWE programming right now, knowing that that the top two titles won't be on the line at Fastlane, knowing that Triple H really won't have an impact week to week, and he is the one with the World Heavyweight Championship, reminiscent of Brock Lesnar when he had it and never showed up. And, the tag division is a joke. So, I mean, we don't really have much to look forward to right now in terms of a middle and low card for the pay-per-view and maybe even beyond. Especially if Ambrose is going to have a match with Lesnar at WrestleMania, we know the IC title is not going to be on the line in that match because they wouldn't put the IC title on Lesnar. So, I mean, man, is the WWE been making a mistake by not highlighting these titles right now, and because they will not be highlighted for the next few weeks at least? And I mean, do you see a solution here for the tag team division?
Man, in terms of the tag team division, well, the solution is the one that we mentioned last week, and that's probably bringing up Enzo and Cass from NXT, because I struggle to even come up with teams on the main roster at this point, beyond the Usos and the New Day, and I guess with the Ascension. I mean, the primetime players are no more. Cesaro and Kid, not together because of injuries. There just aren't a lot of teams. So no, the tag team division, I think, is in a bad way right now. They need some new blood. Dudley Boys, I mean, come on, give me a break. They're entertaining to watch sometimes, but they're by no means a threat to win the belts. We've seen that. So, look, I mean, maybe you get Rowan and Harper back in more of a steady tag team rotation or something, but they need to do something because the tag division is stale as fuck right now.
Ben, really quickly, let me respond to your tag team division thing, and then I'll let you get your thoughts on the two top titles here. I think, it's interesting to me, and I don't understand why they don't have Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, like you said, in a tag team, and why they don't have Rusev and King Barrett in a tag team. Now, I know 3 members of the League of Nations right now are injured, but they haven't always been injured. And, it really seems like Rowan and Harper, they never really have anything going on. I know Rowan faced the Big Show on Monday Night Raw, but it's very rare that those two are actually wrestling in a match. So give them something to do. There's nothing wrong with that, and they would automatically be one of the best tag teams. So not only would you be giving them something to do, but you would automatically be boosting the tag team division by putting another credible team out there. And the same thing goes with the League of Nations. Like, what is the League of Nations doing right now? Absolutely nothing. But if you have King Barrett and Del Rio, or King Barrett and Rusev form a tag team, that will increase the credibility of the tag team division. And if they become the tag team champions at some point, it adds credibility back to the League of Nations. Right. So it seems to me like that's a win-win. So I have no idea on earth why they're not doing this. And this is a huge, huge mistake on their part. And it's almost like the solution is hitting them in the face because these teams are already on the main roster.
They're there. I mean, in the case of Rowan and Harper, have been a damn good team before. So it's not like you're unsure that they can do this. They were one of the best teams, if not the best team on the roster last year. I guess in 2014.
Yeah, so they were having a really good run until I believe Rowan got hurt.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So
yeah, absolutely. In terms of the world title and the IC belt, look, I mean, it's amazing what a different place we're in than we were just 6, 7, 8 months ago when you had Seth Rollins defending the world championship constantly, headlining every pay-per-view with the world title, and John Cena defending the U.S. title every single week on Raw and having 4-star matches with every guy on the roster. So it's amazing that now we're in a place where Dean Ambrose isn't even defending the Intercontinental title at a major pay-per-view, and the world title is back on a part-timer who probably isn't going to wrestle until WrestleMania. So yeah, that's look, WWE, we've given them credit for attempting at times to restore some prestige of the titles and make them mean more because, of course, that's what it's supposed to be all about. And this to me does seem like a bit of a step backwards. I understand the larger storyline reason for having Triple H with the world title, but I think you could have had him defend the World Heavyweight Championship, maybe against Dean Ambrose, maybe against Brock Lesnar. I don't know. You could have had him defend it against someone at Fastlane and retain, and then go on to face whoever it's going to be, whether it's Reigns or Ambrose or whatever, at WrestleMania. I think that could have happened. So I don't know. I just don't understand WWE's thought process here. Dean Ambrose, for the most part, had gotten pretty hot, with the IC title feud with Kevin Owens. So of course, as a huge Dean Ambrose fan, I'm appreciative of him being in the main event and being in a main event storyline here going into Fastlane, but not defending the IC title. It's criminal as far as I'm concerned, John.
Yeah, it was a horrible decision on WWE's part if they knew that this was going to be the main event at Fastlane, and if they were going to propel Ambrose to the main event, and still have him retain the IC title at the Royal Rumble against Kevin Owens. If they knew they were going to have Ambrose go straight to the main event and contend for the World Heavyweight Championship.
Put the belt back on Owens.
Exactly. Because we thought that after this IC title feud that Owens would be the one to go to the main event, but it seems like they did that with Ambrose, so therefore Owens should have the title, and therefore he could defend it and keep the momentum going that the IC title has right now. But you're right. It looks like potentially for 2.5 months, we're not going to see the IC title defended or part of a storyline. And by having that much time off screen, it's going to hurt the credibility of the title. So that was a huge, huge mistake. And I'm wondering that maybe the plan wasn't to have Dean Ambrose in the main event, but because of what happened at the Royal Rumble and because of Roman Reigns getting booed and not being over anymore, they felt compelled to put Dean Ambrose in the main event at Fastlane, maybe doing another audible there and just being in a tough position right now with having the belt on Ambrose, because even if you had Ambrose fight someone on Raw and lose the title, it's possible that wouldn't make him look good and he wouldn't be a credible threat to win the World Heavyweight Championship when he couldn't even defend the IC title. Now, I could be wrong about that, but it looks like, once again, the WWE has put themselves into a horrible position where it's almost like a lose-lose here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, to me, it just seems like they had to be some sort of an audible again, because you're right. It makes no sense for them to be doing what they're doing now and to not have had Owens go over Ambrose, or set up some kind of. Who knows? Maybe they'll set up some kind of a scenario where Ambrose loses the belt between now and Fastlane, or immediately after Fastlane, or something like that. And if you have designs on putting him in a main event storyline or a match against Brock Lesnar, John, that's got to happen, I think. So, we'll see. But right now, the title picture, I think, up and down the board, with the exception of maybe the Divas division, is in a pretty bad way.
Yeah, and really quickly, I was against Lesnar. I liked having Lesnar champion, but I, more than a lot of people, really hated the fact that the World Heavyweight title was not on WWE programming week to week, and sometimes month to month. And I think that hurt the prestige of the title. And it seems like, they're doing the same thing again now with Triple H. And so that just really sucks. So I think it really does hurt both titles. And, things don't feel as important, Ben, when the title isn't on television. It's just that simple.
It is just that simple. John, one last takeaway here, sort of outside the ring, we want to touch on briefly here. WWE has been catching some flack. There have been a number of articles written accusing them of sexual harassment. Now, of course, WWE's treatment of women over the past 20 years has been written about ad nauseum. But in particular, one of the more recent examples, which I loved, and we discussed this in the show on our Royal Rumble recap show where Ric Flair grabbed Becky Lynch and gave her a kiss during the Divas Championship match against Charlotte. I thought that was an effective use of Flair to get heel heat. It's perfectly in line with his character. So look, I'm not saying that WWE has a stellar record when it comes to how they portray women. I think quite the opposite. I think it's actually been embarrassing a lot of the times, most of the time actually, the way they portray women, but that incident in particular didn't really bother me. But nonetheless, they're getting a lot of criticism for that and for their broader record in terms of how women are portrayed on their television shows. So, in a reaction, or in a statement rather, reacting to one of the articles that's out there, WWE had to put out its own statement defending themselves. So this is what they said, John. They said WWE programming, which features fictional characters that cover a range of personalities similar to movies and television shows, tells stories of good versus evil. In addition, as our ongoing storylines develop, we will continue to position women as both strong competitors and compelling individuals. Well, that's news to me. I think it's something who's the product for a pretty long time. I'll give them credit for the Charlotte Becky Lynch feud, and since the quote unquote Divas Revolution, they have seemed to try and approach things a little bit differently in terms of women. But look, John, we saw Brie Bella get a win over Charlotte on Monday Night Raw, a pinfall win. Why? Nobody believes that Brie Bella is anywhere close to the wrestler that Charlotte is, nor is she a threat in any way, shape, or form to win the Divas Championship. So why was that done? It was done because they wanted a storyline of some kind or just some general plot development for Total Divas, which kind of sums up the way that they look at their Divas division. They're not on the same level as men. They don't consider them athletes to the same degree. They consider them to be beautiful women who can have cat fights and fight about men and smack each other and hang out by the pool in bikinis. And this goes all the way back, of course, to the Attitude Era, which if you look back now in 2016 and look at some of the mud wrestling and pillow fights and lesbian scenes and Vince McMahon spanking people and making Trish Stratus bark like a dog in her bra and panties in the ring. I mean, that stuff, thank God, I don't think would fly today in 2016. But look, much like their record when it comes to African-American performers, John, as we talked about several times on this show, Vince McMahon should be embarrassed for the way that he's portrayed women on this show. This statement is a complete fucking joke, and I think anybody who watches the show understands that. So I might not have had a problem with what Flair did. I actually thought it was pretty funny. But for them to come out and say that they're positioning women as strong competitors and compelling individuals, there's just no evidence really to back that up, save for maybe the past couple of months. So WWE, hopefully they recognize that their record on women is pretty fucking embarrassing at this point, John.
I agree with everything you said, but I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance here, because I have a huge problem with the people that were so offended by this and couldn't get over this. And here's the reason why. Because I think in real life situations, this is an issue. Equal pay and things like that. I'm all for equality and all of that. But the when it comes to important things in life and society, Ben, but the bottom line here is that this is a TV show. And by the way, really quickly, when we have more time, I really want to get into this more, Ben, because I think this could be a really great topic for when we have more time. We're kind of up against it now. But this, Ben, is a television show, okay? It's scripted and it's fake. It's not real. And what I don't understand is that there are things that happen to women on other shows on television that are 10 times worse than this. Because it's part of the story. I mean, it's just how it is. So, yes, I can understand that the WWE is a little bit different. It's portrayed a little bit differently. But when it comes down to it, the WWE is entertainment, it's fake, and it's a television show. It's a staged event. It's like a play or a show or anything like that. So I don't understand why they are catching so much heat for this when every other show or form of entertainment that does things that are even worse than this to women sometimes don't really catch any heat for it. So that's the part that I have a problem with. I don't really get that. And so I don't think it's fair that happened. And man, like you said, I think some of the stuff they used to do was horrible. Some of the things they do today, still isn't great. But I do think that this is being overblown. And I think we are being a little too sensitive here. I mean, Ric Flair giving Becky Lynch a kiss? Like,
Well, that in particular, I had no
I
problem.
mean, what the fuck is the big deal? I mean, really. And I mean, look, there's some things that just you got to let it go, man. Because if we get to the point where we don't want to offend anyone or anything and we become so PC, then the show is not going to be entertaining anymore because you're never going to be able to do anything. So, look, I agree that in real life, this is an issue, and I'm on the complete other side. But for this and it being a TV show, I think this is just being a little bit overblown because it's staged and it's a show and it's acting. It's not real life. I mean, what are your quick thoughts on that?
That's a good point, and I think you're right. We'll have to delve into this a little bit more in a future episode on whether WWE is and should be held to the same standard as other things. I mean, is it different than your average half hour or hour drama? I mean, I think that it is, and it's kind of hard to put your finger on exactly why. Maybe it's because it is actual people, essentially most of the time, playing themselves on TV, even though they're playing a quote-unquote character and things are scripted. I think my problem is, you're right, certain things happen to characters in other TV shows. Women act a certain way. There are all, millions of instances across pretty much every show in the history of television. You're right about that. But I think there are a few television shows, John, that I can think of that have portrayed women as a whole, as a gender, as poorly as WWE has for 20 years. I guess that's
Right,
sort of the point that I would be making, is not necessarily, can you have one character who's a vindictive, dramatic bitch who's only interested in screwing over her friends by sleeping with their husbands, or, flaunting her bikini body by the pool, whatever the case may be, stereotypical bullshit like that. I think that's okay. But, I mean, the problem is deeper than that, in my view, in WWE, and reflects, I don't know if it's Vince McMahon himself or whatever that, whoever's making these decisions, writing the shows for the past 20, 25 years, just the way they look at women as a whole, because there are millions of examples that you can pick out where that's the case. So it's not necessarily, to me, something happening on a character, or a character doing one thing that might be quote unquote, catty or what have you. It's just a general way that women have been presented. But you're right, it's a fascinating topic and something we should explore more.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Ben. And I do want to say, by the way, that look, sexual harassment, domestic violence, these are real issues, and that I am completely against, and I think are horrible. And in society, we need to improve on those for sure, and be more sensitive to those. I just don't think we should hold something that is entertainment and fake to the same standards that we do to real life and real life situations. Because at the same time, Ben, it's almost in a way disrespectful to these things that happen in real life and in society, in a way, by putting them on the same level of importance. So like you said, we'll have to get into that more. Certainly something very interesting, and we would love to hear our followers' thoughts on that, and any female listeners for sure at the GP Podcast on Twitter.
Absolutely.
Ben, we are up against it time-wise a little bit here, so this is our last segment. It is called Last Call Life Advice. And on this segment, Ben, you and I give life advice to our listeners, maybe some things that are going on in our lives, things that we've been thinking about lately, and we phrase them into more general thoughts, and give it to our audience, to you guys, and hope that you can use this in your daily lives to improve yourself and your life in general. So, Ben, what is your last call life advice for this week?
So my last call life advice, John, is to, if you're trying to stop a bad behavior or end a bad habit, try and replace it with something beneficial to yourself. For example, like if you're trying to quit drinking, if you have a problem with drinking or just want to drink less, sometimes it can be hard to just sit around your couch watching Monday Night Raw, where ordinarily you'd be drinking beer and just do nothing, and you're sitting there biting your fingernails thinking about how much you'd love to have a drink right then. So instead of that, try and replace that. Take the time that you might have spent drinking beer, going out to the bar and getting drunk, and join a gym or go do something else, or take up a new hobby. Identify something positive that you can do for yourself, and then put that in place of the time that you had spent doing the previous bad behavior. Because I can speak from firsthand experience that, sometimes quitting things, quote unquote, cold turkey can be a real bitch and a bit of a problem, and you need something else to occupy your time and occupy your thoughts if you want to have a prayer of actually accomplishing that. So find something good that you can do to improve yourself and improve your life, and put that in the place of the bad behavior that you're trying to get rid of.
That's fantastic advice. Well done as always, Ben. Really great. My last call of life advice this week is to believe in yourself, believe in what you do, and recognize what separates you from the general masses. And look, here's my example. I am a visual identity and branding designer, along with a podcast host, along with a little bit of modeling on the side. And, really, mostly in regards to the graphic design work, these days you can go online and you can get some of the services that I provide for insanely cheap. And now of course they're not the same quality, but that's just how it is. So it would be very easy to question yourself, or for me to question myself, but don't. Because in my example, I provide full service, original, high end, customized, professional creative and design, which is much different from what you find for incredibly cheap online. And the way I say it is, you can get a car with nothing in it, that can get you from point A to point B, or you can get a luxury car that gives you all the bells and whistles that makes you look better and represents you better. And so, it can be very easy to say, well, am I overcharging, or maybe I'm not, offering something that's that much better? Like, should I be offering my services cheaper? But don't do that. Don't sell yourself short. Know that what you are offering is unique, and that no one else can do that. And have confidence in yourself. And you'll know that whatever you feel is right in terms of your worth, that's what you should charge, at least in my case. And, that's what you should be confident in. So my last call life advice for this week, I know it was a lot about me, but I think everyone can apply it to themselves in one way or another. Believe in yourself, believe in what you do, and recognize what separates you from everyone else, and certainly take advantage of that, Ben.
We love ourselves here in the Guilty Pleasures podcast. There's no doubt about that.
We do. So, ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps it up for episode 28 of the Guilty Pleasures podcast. Thank you so much for coming along for the ride. This was a football-heavy episode for sure, but we managed to get everything else in that we normally do. So thank you so much to our loyal listeners. We appreciate all of your support. And once again, be sure to tweet us with your pick for the game on Sunday and your picks for the prop bets. Maybe we'll announce next week on the air who did the best.
Oh, yeah.
And once again, reach out to us with any other questions or comments about the episode and the podcast in general. So once again, you can reach out to us on Twitter at the GP Podcast. You could go on Facebook, facebook.com/The Guilty Pleasures Podcast. You can email us, theguiltypleasurespodcast@gmail.com. So those are 3 ways to get in touch with us. And be sure to follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So, Ben, anything else you want to say before we go off the air here?
Hey, just enjoy the game on Sunday. Don't drive drunk, and we'll see you all back here next week.